The old-timers in New Mexico have stories, whispers that drift through the canyons on the high desert wind. They talk about things that hunt in the dead of winter, when the world is frozen and silent. Things you don't want to meet. I used to think they were just campfire tales, something to spook the tourists. Then, I took a job as a fire lookout in the Carson National Forest. That's when I learned some legends are real. My first winter up there was brutal. The snow came early and stayed late, piling up in drifts that buried the trails. The tower, my little metal box on stilts, felt like the loneliest place on earth. For weeks, the only sounds were the howling wind and the crackle of my radio. Then, one night, the radio went silent. Just static. I figured it was the storm, a downed line somewhere, but the silence that followed felt heavier. It started with the sounds. At first, it was a faint scratching on the tower's metal legs, like a branch rubbing against it, but there were no trees tall enough to reach my cabin. The sound grew bolder each night. Scratching turned into a rhythmic tapping, then a heavy, deliberate pounding that shook the whole structure. I'd peer out the windows into the swirling snow, but I never saw anything. The motion sensor lights I'd installed for peace of mind never flickered on. Whatever was out there was smart. It was staying just out of range. One evening, staring into the impenetrable white, I saw it. Or, I thought I did. A flicker of movement at the edge of the clearing. It was tall, unnaturally so, and thin. Its limbs were too long, moving with a jerky, disjointed gait. I grabbed my binoculars, my hands shaking so badly I could barely focus. When I finally got a clear look, my blood ran cold. It wasn't an animal. It was gaunt, its skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame, the color of old bone. It stood on two legs, but it hunched over, its long arms dangling nearly to the snow. And its head was like a deer's skull, crowned with a rack of dark, jagged antlers. But where the eyes should have been, there were only deep, black sockets. It turned its head, slowly, as if it could feel me watching. Even from that distance, I felt its gaze pierce right through me. Panic set in. My radio was dead. The landline was out. The nearest ranger station was 50 miles away through impassable snow. I was trapped. I barricaded the trapdoor to the stairs with my supply crates, my cot, anything heavy I could find. Sleep was impossible. All night, I listened to it circling the tower. The pounding was relentless, a monstrous heartbeat in the frozen wilderness. Sometimes, I'd hear a voice, a distorted whisper carried on the wind. It sounded like my own name, stretched and warped into something horrible. Days blurred into a sleepless, terrified haze. I rationed my food, my water, my sanity. I kept my rifle loaded, though I knew deep down it would be useless. During the brief moments of daylight, I'd scan the trees, and I'd see it, watching me. It never came closer during the day, just stood there, a silent, skeletal sentinel at the edge of the woods. It was patient. It was waiting. One afternoon, the wind died down, and an eerie quiet fell over the forest. The silence was more terrifying than the noise. I crept to the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was gone. The clearing was empty. For a wild, hopeful moment, I thought it had given up. Then I looked down. Directly below the tower, etched into the deep snow, was a perfect, intricate spiral. And in the center of that spiral, placed with deliberate care, was a deer skull, identical to the one on its head. It was a message, a marca. That night was the worst. The pounding on the tower legs started again, but this time it was different. It was frenzied, powerful. The whole tower swayed. Metal groaning in protest. Then came a new sound. A scraping, climbing sound. It was coming up. I scrambled away from the trapdoor, pressing myself into the far corner of the room, aiming my rifle at the barricade. I could hear it, right underneath the floor. I could hear its ragged, hollow breathing. The wood of the trapdoor began to splinter. A long, bone-white finger, more like a talon, punched through the wood. Then another, and another. It was clawing its way in, The whisper was in my head now, no longer on the wind. It promised warmth. It promised an end to the hunger, the cold. It was a seductive, chilling lie. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the end. And then, a sound I thought I'd never hear again. The crackle of the radio. A voice, human and clear, cutting through the static. "Look out, 19. This is base. We see a break in the weather. Helicopter is prepping for a supply drop. Do you copy?" The scratching stopped. The whispering ceased. I held my breath, listening. There was a low, frustrated hiss from beneath the floor, and then the sound of something heavy dropping to the snow below. I waited, not daring to move, until the first light of dawn broke through the clouds. When I finally found the courage to look, the clearing was empty. The spiral was gone. The skull was gone. The only things left were deep, unsettling tracks leading back into the forest, and the splintered remains of my trapdoor. The rescue team said I was lucky to be alive, that I was suffering from severe cabin fever and isolation. They didn't believe me, of course. They couldn't explain the damage to the tower, or the tracks that just stopped in the middle of a clearing. I never went back. I left that job and moved as far from those mountains as I could. But sometimes, on cold, quiet nights, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear it. That whisper, calling my name. And I know, somewhere out there in the frozen dark, it's still waiting. It's patient. It never forgets a hunt. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for more Tales from the Shadows. The final whistle blew, and the roar of the crowd at the Dolphins game was deafening. We'd won, and the energy in Miami was electric. My friends and I celebrated late into the night, the victory buzz carrying us through the city. It was well past 2 in the morning when I finally decided to head home. My apartment was a decent drive away, requiring me to take a long, lonely stretch of highway that cut through the edge of the Everglades. Normally, the drive was peaceful, a quiet transition from the city's chaos to the calm of the suburbs. But tonight, something felt off. The air, usually thick with the humid, swampy scent of South Florida, was still and heavy, carrying an unnatural chill. I cranked up the radio, trying to shake off the growing unease. The streetlights became fewer and farther between, casting long, dancing shadows across the road. That's when I saw it. Up ahead, in the glare of my headlights, was a figure standing in the middle of my lane. I slammed on the brakes, my car screeching to a halt just feet away. It was a man, or at least, I thought it was. He was tall, unnaturally so, with limbs that seemed too long for his body. He was just standing there, motionless, his back to me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was he hurt? Drunk? I honked my horn. Once, then twice. No reaction. The figure remained perfectly still, a dark silhouette against the swampy blackness. A cold dread washed over me. This wasn't right. I cautiously put the car in reverse, planning to back up and find another route. But as soon as my reverse lights flickered on, the figure's head snapped around. It turned at an impossible angle, a full 180 degrees, while its body stayed facing away from me. The face. It wasn't human. It was gaunt and pale, with eyes that glowed with a faint, predatory light, like a nocturnal animal's. They were fixed directly on me. Panic seized me. I fumbled with the gear stick, shifting back into drive and flooring the gas pedal. I swerved around the figure, my tires squealing on the pavement. As primera pasé it, I risked a glance in my side mirror. It was gone. The road behind me was empty. My breath came in ragged gasps. What had I just seen? I told myself it was a trick of the light, my mind playing games after a long day. But I couldn't shake the image of those glowing eyes. I kept my foot pressed hard on the accelerator, desperate to put as much distance as possible between me and that spot on the highway. I glanced at my rearview mirror, my heart still pounding. The road was dark and empty. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm my nerves. Maybe it was just my imagination. I focused on the road ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Then, a sound from the back seat made me jump. A low, guttural, click. It sounded like someone clearing their throat, but rougher, more animalistic. Primera, fros, I was alone in the car. I had locked all the doors. There was no one else with me. I slowly, hesitantly, looked into the rearview mirror again. My blood ran cold. Reflected in the glass, crouched in my back seat, was the same figure from the road. Its long, spindly limbs were folded into the small space, its head tilted at that same unnatural angle. Those same glowing eyes stared back at me, filled with a chilling, intelligent malice. It was inside my car. I screamed, a raw, terrified sound that was swallowed by the night. I swerved wildly, my car careening across the lanes. The thing in the back didn't move, its gaze never leaving mine in the mirror. It let out another sound, a dry, rasping noise that sounded horribly like a mimicry of a human laugh. It was a sound of pure mockery, of a predator toying with its prey. My mind went blank with terror. All I could think was, this is it. I'm going to die. I yanked the steering wheel hard, sending the car into a spin. It fishtailed across the asphalt before crashing into a guardrail with a sickening crunch of metal. The world went black for a moment. When Primera Camitu, the air was filled with the smell of burnt rubber and the hiss of a busted radiator. My head was throbbing. I slowly pushed myself up, my body atching. I looked into the back seat. It was empty. The figure was gone. I scrambled out of the wrecked car, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. I didn't care about the car. I just had to get away. I started running, stumbling down the dark highway, not looking back. I didn't stop until the first signs of dawn streaked the sky and I saw the distant lights of a gas station. When I finally told the police what happened, they dismissed it as a hallucination. A story brought on by shock and a bad car accident. They couldn't explain how the back door of my car, which I had locked, was found wide open. They couldn't explain the deep, claw-like scratches etched into the inside of the roof, right above where the back seat was. I never drive that stretch of highway at night anymore. Some nights, when the air is still and the moon is hidden, I think I hear it. That low, clicking sound, carried on the wind. And ik know it, still out there, somewhere in the darkness of the Everglades, waiting. It knows my face. It knows my car. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that it's just waiting for me to make another mistake. The Dolphins may have won the game, but I lost something that night. My sense of safety, my peace of mind, and I'm terrified that one day, that thing will come back to claim the rest. The forest is a different beast. At night, during the day, it's a place of beauty, of quiet trails, and birdsong. But when the sun dips below the horizon, it transforms. The familiar becomes alien. Every shadow plays tricks on your mind. Every snap of a twig sounds like a footstep. I learned this the hard way, on a desolate stretch of highway, cutting through the dense woods of northern Minnesota. My name is Alex and I used to be a skeptic. I used to laugh at ghost stories and local legends. Not anymore. It was late, probably around 2 a.m. I was driving back from a business trip, pushing through the exhaustion to get home to my own bed. The road was a lonely ribbon of asphalt, swallowed by an ocean of pine and birch trees on either side. My headlights were the only stars in a world of absolute black. The radio had long since given way to static, leaving only the hum of my engine and the rhythmic thud of tires on pavement. I had my window cracked, letting the crisp, cold air keep me awake. The scent of pine was thick, almost heavy. That's when I saw it. It wasn't a deer, or a bear, or any animal I could name. For a split second, a figure darted across the road, maybe 50 yards ahead of me. It was impossibly fast. One moment, there was nothing but road. The next, this thing was there, and then it was gone, swallowed by the forest on the other side. My foot instinctively slammed on the brake, my car screeching to a halt in the middle of the empty highway. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I sat there, engine idling, staring into the darkness where it had vanished. What was taut, it was tall, unnaturally so, and gaunt. Its limbs were long, too long, moving with a jerky, disjointed speed that made my skin crawl. It was pale, a sickly, grayish-white. It seemed to glow in my headlights. I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light, a deer moving at a weird angle. But I knew what I saw. The image was burned into my retinas. A tall, skeletal figure, moving with predatory quickness. I should have just driven away. I should have floored it and not looked back until I saw the city lights. But a morbid curiosity, the kind that makes you slow down for a car wreck, took hold. I grabbed the powerful flashlight I kept in my glove compartment, my hand trembling slightly. I told myself I just needed to be sure. Just a quick look to prove it was nothing. I switched off the engine, plunging myself into an unnerving silence. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, I opened the car door. The cold hit me instantly, far colder than it should have been for an autumn night. The air was still, unnaturally so. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just a profound, listening silence. I switched on my flashlight, its powerful beam cutting a sharp cone through the darkness. I pointed it toward the spot where the figure had disappeared into the woods. The trees stood like silent, skeletal sentinels, their branches like gnarled fingers reaching for the sky. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked to the edge of the road. My footsteps sounded deafening on the gravel shoulder. I swept the light back and forth along the tree line. Nothing. Just a wall of impenetrable black between the trunks. "Hello!" I called out, my voice sounding small and pathetic. The silence that answered was heavier than any sound. I felt a primal fear rising in my chest, a voice screaming at me to get back in the car. Then, I heard it. A faint sound from deep within the woods. It wasn't a snap or a rustle. It was a soft, wet, tearing sound. It was rhythmic, and it was close. Too close. A wave of nausea washed over me. I stood frozen, my light fixed on the darkness, my ears straining. The sound stopped. The silence rushed back in, even more terrifying than before. I began to back away slowly, never taking my eyes off the woods. My hand fumbled for the car door handle. That's when I heard the voice. It wasn't a human voice. It was a high, thin, whistling sound, like the wind through a cracked bone, but it formed a word. My word. It mimicked my own voice from just moments before. "Hello," it whispered from the trees. It was a perfect, chilling echo of my own call, but distorted, mocking. My blood ran cold. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't a trick of the light. This was something intelligent, and it was toying with me. Panic finally shattered my paralysis. I scrambled back into the car, slamming and locking the door in one frantic motion. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. As the engine roared back to life, my headlights flashed against the tree line again, and for a fraction of a second, I saw it. It was standing just inside the woods, partially hidden behind a thick pine. It was tall, emaciated, its skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Its head was wrong. It looked like a deer's skull, bleached and ancient, with long, jagged antlers. But where the eyes should have been, there were 2 points of faint, cold light fixed directly on me. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. The sight was so fundamentally wrong, so against the laws of nature, that my mind couldn't fully process it. I threw the car into drive and stomped on the gas. The tire screamed on the pavement as I peeled out, leaving a cloud of smoke behind me. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror. I just drove, my eyes glued to the road ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. 4 miles. I expected to see it again, to see that gaunt figure step out of the trees ahead of me. Every shadow seemed to take its shape, but the road remained empty. After what felt like an eternity, I saw the distant glow of a town. The relief was so overwhelming it was almost painful. I didn't stop until I was parked in a brightly lit gas station, surrounded by the comforting sounds of civilization. I sat in my car for a long time, shaking. I never went back to that part of the state. I quit that job and found one that didn't require me to travel through the wilderness at night. I told a few people my story. Most of them laughed it off, told me I was tired, that I'd imagined it. But I found others, online, in old forums and local legend pages. They told stories of a creature from Algonquin folklore, a malevolent spirit of the winter and the forest, born of desperation and hunger. They called it the Wendigo. They said it could mimic human voices to lure its prey. They said it was impossibly fast and unnaturally tall. They described a creature with a deer's skull for a head and glowing eyes. I know what I saw that night. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't a legend. It was real. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I can almost hear that thin, whistling voice whispering from the darkness. And I know, deep in the wild places of the world, ancient things still walk the earth. And if you ever find yourself on a lonely road, deep in the woods at night, and you see something cross the road just a little too fast, don't stop. Just drive and pray it doesn't know your name. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more. Stay safe. Out there. My dad always said the high desert of northern Arizona had a different kind of silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was watchful. He'd moved there after my mom passed, seeking solitude in a small, isolated house, miles from the nearest town. I used to visit him every few months, but this time felt different. The air was heavy, charged with an energy that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The moment I pulled into his dusty driveway, I knew something was wrong. His truck was there, but the house was dark, and an unnatural stillness hung over the property. I called out for him as I walked up the porch steps. "Dad, you home?" The only reply was the creak of the door as I pushed it open. Inside, it was cold. A half-eaten plate of food sat on the kitchen table, looking like it had been there for a day or two. A deep sense of unease washed over me. I checked his bedroom, the small workshop in the back, everywhere. He was gone. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was predatory. That first night, I tried to convince myself he'd just gone for a long walk, maybe to clear his head. But as darkness fell, the desert outside came alive with sounds I'd never heard before. It started with a faint scratching at the back door, like a dog wanting to be let in. I ignored it, but it grew louder, more insistent. Then came the whispers. They seemed to come from all directions at once, slithering through the cracks in the walls, just on the edge of hearing. I couldn't make out the words, but the intent was clear, malicious and ancient. I locked myself in the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the window, I saw movement in the moonlight. A tall, gaunt figure was standing at the edge of the property, its silhouette impossibly thin, its limbs too long. It wasn't human. It just stood there, watching the house. I ducked below the window, my breath catching in my throat. This had to be a nightmare. It just had to be. The next day, I found my dad's journal on his nightstand. I'd overlooked it in my initial panic. The last few entries were frantic, almost illegible. He wrote about a creature he'd seen lurking around his property. A hollow man, he called it. He described how it would mimic the sounds of animal security's howl that was slightly off, a bird's call that sounded like a distorted human voice. Then, he wrote something that chilled me to the bone. He said it had started to mimic his voice. He'd hear himself calling from the desert, trying to lure him out. The final entry was just one sentence. Swearing my face, my blood ran cold. I dropped the journal as if it were on fire. The scratching at the door, the whispers ... It wasn't my imagination. Suddenly, a familiar sound cut through the silence. It was my dad's old truck, the engine sputtering to life outside. I rushed to the window, my mind reeling. Oh! The keys were right here on the kitchen counter. I peered out into the twilight, and what I saw made my world collapse. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. It looked like my dad. Same plaid shirt, same worn-out baseball cap. But the way it moved was wrong. It was jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. It turned its head slowly, and its eyes met mine through the window. They weren't my dad's eyes. They were dark, empty pits, devoid of any warmth or life. A slow, wide grin stretched across its face, a grin that was far too wide for any human. It didn't get out of the truck. It just sat there, staring at me with that horrifying smile. It then raised a hand and tapped on the driver's side window. A slow, deliberate tapped, a sound I knew all too well. It was a little rhythm my dad always used to get my attention when I was a kid. My mind screamed. This thing, the Skinwalker, hadn't just taken my dad's form. It had taken his memories. I stumbled back from the window, my legs giving way. I was trapped. The sun had set, and the desert belonged to it now. I could hear it outside, circling the house, not walking, but skittering, its long limbs scraping against the sand and rock. Then, I heard a key slide into the front door lock. The same set of keys I was holding in my trembling hand. A jiggle, a click, and the doorknob began to turn. "Son," a voice called from the other side. It was my dad's voice, perfect in every detail, laced with concern. "Son, are you in there?" I was so worried. "Let me in." I pressed myself against the far wall, my hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. I knew what was on the other side of that door. It wasn't my father. It was a hungry, ancient evil wearing his skin like a costume. The doorknob rattled more violently now. "Let me," the voice demanded. The gentle tone gone, replaced by a guttural snarl that was anything but human. The wood of the door began to splinter. It was coming in. Have you ever felt like you were being watched? Not just a passing glance, but a deep, predatory stare that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. My friend Liam and I felt that for 3 straight days. We were deep in the backcountry of northern Minnesota, a place where the woods feel ancient and untouched. We were experienced hikers, looking for a real challenge, a place far from any trail or sign of civilization. We found it, but we also found something else. It started on the second day. We'd made camp near a small, still lake, the water as black as ink. The air was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no rustling squirrels, just the whisper of wind through the pines. That's when Liam pointed. High up, nestled in the dense canopy of a towering pine tree, was a figure. It was too far to make out details, but it was unmistakably humanoid, impossibly tall and gaunt. It just stood there, motionless, a dark silhouette against the darkening sky, staring down at our camp. We tried to rationalize it, a trick of the light, a strange branch formation, but deep down, we knew what we were seeing. We felt its gaze like a physical weight. That night, sleep was impossible. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a jolt of terror through us. We kept the fire roaring, its light pushing back the oppressive darkness, but we knew it was still out there, watching from the trees. The feeling was suffocating. We'd packed for a week-long trip, but by sunrise, we had a new, unspoken plan. Get out. We packed in a hurry, not even bothering with breakfast, constantly glancing up at the tree line. The figure was gone, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. As we started our long trek back, the forest seemed to change. The familiar paths we'd marked on our map seemed to twist and turn, leading us in circles. The silence was broken by strange noises now, a faint, dry, rattling sound, like leaves skittering across pavement, seemed to follow us. Then there was the mimicry. We'd hear a faint cry for help, sounding exactly like my voice, coming from a direction we knew was empty. Then a moment later, a shout in Liam's voice, from the opposite direction. It was a cruel psychological game, designed to separate us, to make us panic. We stayed close, practically shoulder to shoulder, our eyes darting everywhere. The sun was beginning to set on our 3rd day, and a cold, primal fear was setting in. We were lost, exhausted, and being hunted. The air grew colder, and a strange, unpleasant smell filled the air, like something old and decaying. It was then that we heard it clearly for the first time, a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground. It wasn't the sound of a bear or a wolf. It was something else, something utterly wrong. Then we saw it again. It wasn't in the trees this time. It was standing at the edge of a clearing we had stumbled into, partially hidden behind a massive oak. It was closer now, and the details were horrifyingly clear. It was impossibly tall and emaciated, its skin stretched tight over its skeletal frame, the color of ash. Its limbs were long and spindly, ending in what looked like dirty, elongated claws. But its head was the worst. It was vaguely deer-like, with a rack of jagged, dark antlers, but its face was a sunken, hollow-eyed mockery of a human's. And it was just staring. Its eyes seemed to glow with a faint, malevolent light in the twilight. It took a step towards us. The movement was jerky, unnatural, and silent. Utterly silent. That was the most terrifying part. A creature that large should have made a sound, but it moved like a ghost. Liam and I didn't scream. We couldn't. The fear was a solid lump in our throats. We just turned and ran. We ran without looking back, fueled by pure adrenaline, crashing through underbrush, ignoring the branches that whipped and tore at our faces and clothes. Behind us, we could hear the sounds getting closer. The dry, rattling noise was now a frantic skittering, and the mimicry had turned into a horrifying chorus of our own terrified shouts, echoing all around us. It felt like the forest itself was screaming at us. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs felt like lead. I don't know how long we ran. It could have been minutes or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Suddenly, we burst out of the woods and onto a dirt road. We collapsed, gasping for air, our bodies shaking uncontrollably. We looked back at the tree line. The forest was dark and silent again. There was no sound, no movement. It was as if nothing had happened. We stumbled down that road for what felt like an eternity until the headlights of a park ranger's truck appeared like a miracle. He didn't believe our story, of course. He chalked it up to exhaustion and dehydration causing hallucinations. He drove us back to our car, and we left that place without a second glance. We never went back. Some nights, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear the faint echo of my own voice calling for help from the woods. And sometimes, when I look out my window into the dark, I get the chilling feeling that somewhere, high up in the trees, a tall, gaunt figure is still staring. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the dark corners of the world. Stay safe out there. The night shift at a gas station in the middle of nowhere is already a recipe for weirdness. You get the long-haul truckers, the lost tourists, the occasional oddball running from something or someone. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened last Tuesday. My name is Louis, and I've worked the graveyard shift at the Route 66 Oasis for 3 years. It's usually dead quiet after midnight. Just me, the humming coolers, and the endless stretch of dark asphalt outside. That night, a beat-up sedan pulled up to pump number 3. The car was old, maybe from the 80s, caked in so much dust it was hard to tell the original color. The engine sputtered and died with a final, wheezing cough. I watched from behind the counter, not thinking much of it. A guy got out. He was tall, unnaturally so, with long limbs that seemed to fold and unfold in a strange, disjointed way. He was wearing a heavy coat, which was odd for a mild Arizona night. His face was hidden in the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. He didn't start pumping gas. He just stood there, staring at the store. I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. This was different from the usual late-night weirdos. There was an intensity to his stillness that felt predatory. After what felt like an eternity, he started walking toward the entrance. The bell above the door didn't jingle when he came in. It just didn't. And in one moment, the doorway was empty. The next, he was standing there. He ambled over to the counter, his movements jerky and wrong. He still hadn't taken off his hat, and his face was a canvas of deep shadows. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice a little tighter than I wanted. He didn't answer. He just looked at me, his head tilted at an angle that would have made my neck ache. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. I could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights, the thumping of my own heart. "Just need some water," a voice rasped. It was dry, like sandpaper on wood. He pointed a long, bony finger at the cooler behind me. I turned, grabbed a bottle, and set it on the counter. "That'll be $2.50, I said, trying to keep my eyes on the register, but my gaze kept flicking up to him. I still couldn't see his face. It was like the shadows were clinging to him, refusing to let the light in. He slid a crumpled $5 bill across the counter. His hand was grotesque. The fingers were too long, the nails yellowed and thick, more like claws than anything human. I took the money, my fingers brushing against his. His skin was cold. Not who's cool, but a deep, unnatural cold, like he'd been lying in a freezer. A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I punched in the sail and gave him his change. He didn't move to take it. He just stood there, his hidden gaze fixed on me. "You look tired, Louis," he said, and my blood ran cold. "I don't wear a name tag. No one here knows my name except my boss, who lives 50 miles away." I stared at him, my mouth suddenly dry. How do you know my name?" A low chuckle emanated from beneath the hat, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Then the voice changed. It became softer, warmer, achingly familiar. "Don't work too hard, sweetie. You need your rest." It was my mom's voice, the exact inflection, the same gentle concern she always had. She passed away 5 years ago. My whole body went rigid. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a similar voice. It was her. The sound of it hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. "What did you say?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. The figure leaned forward slightly, and the voice changed again. This time it was deeper, gruffer. "Listen to your mother, son. A man needs his sleep." My dad's voice, that same stern but loving tone he used when I was a kid and stayed up too late reading comic books. My dad lives in Florida. He hasn't set foot in Arizona in a decade. My mind was screaming. This can't be real. I'm hallucinating. I'm dreaming. But I could feel the cold countertop under my sweating palms, smell the stale coffee in the air. Tease was real. The figure straightened up, and for a terrifying second, I thought the hat would fall off. I didn't want to see what was underneath. I was petrified of what I might find. "Who are you?" I stammered, backing away from the counter until my back hit the cigarette display. The raspy voice returned, scraping the inside of my skull. "Just a traveler, passing through." He finally picked up the water bottle and the change. His movements were still wrong, like a puppet being controlled by an unskilled master. He started to turn toward the door. "You should lock up early tonight, Louis," he said. And again, it was my mom's voice, full of that specific, loving worry. "It's not safe out here." Then, with a final turn, he was gone. The bell above the door remained silent. I stood there, frozen, for what must have been 10 minutes, just staring at the empty doorway. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. I finally lunged for the phone and called my dad. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. He picked up on the third ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Louis, what's wrong?" It's 3 a.m. Hearing his real voice, his actual voice coming through the phone, was both a relief and a new source of terror. It confirmed that what had just happened wasn't in my head. I couldn't explain it to him. "How could I just mumbled something about checking in and hung up. Then I did something I've never done before. I closed the station 3 hours early. I locked the doors, turned off the main lights, and huddled in the back office, watching the security monitors. The beat-up sedan was still parked at Pump 3. No one was in it. I watched the grainy footage, my eyes glued to the screen, expecting that tall figure to emerge from the darkness at any moment. The car just sat there, a silent, menacing monument to the horror I'd just experienced. An Orpus 10-2, just before dawn, as the first gray light began to soften the edges of the night, something happened. The driver's side door of the sedan creaked open, but no one got out. Instead, the car itself seemed to shift. It's hard to describe. It was like watching a film melt. The metal seemed to sag and distort, the shape elongating and twisting. It wasn't a car anymore. It was becoming something else. A long, dark form unfolded from the wreckage, impossibly tall and thin, its limbs bending at angles that defied anatomy. It stood up, a silhouette against the rising sun. For a moment, it turned its head and looked directly at the store, directly at the security camera. Even on the low-resolution monitor, I felt its gaze lock onto me. It knew I was watching. Then, it turned and looked off into the desert, its movements a fluid, horrifying gait that was neither animal nor human. It disappeared into the scrub and mesquite as the sun finally broke over the horizon. I quit my job the next day. I packed my bags and I left that town. I don't know what that thing was. A skinwalker, a demon, something else entirely. All I know is that it wore my parents' voices like a coat, and it knew my name. Sometimes, when it's late and I'm alone, I think I can still hear it. A faint whisper on the edge of hearing. You lokuta, Louise. And the terror comes rushing back, as cold and real as that thing's touch. I don't think I'll ever truly feel safe in the quiet of the night again. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Stay safe out there. The old museum smelled of dust and forgotten time, a scent I'd grown used to over 6 months on the grave shift. My name is Leo, and I was the sole guardian of small-town history from midnight to sunrise. It was an easy gig. The only real excitement was the occasional mouse skittering across the polished floor. That is, until the winter deepened, and the snow piled up outside like frozen waves. It started subtly. I'd be on my first round, a thermos of black coffee in hand, and I'd notice something. Oof. The Indigenous Peoples exhibit was my favorite. It was a quiet, respectful corner of the museum, filled with beautiful beadwork, arrowheads, and a collection of ceremonial masks. One night, I noticed a hand-carved hunting spear, usually parallel to the wall, was angled slightly. I straightened it, thinking the morning crew must have bumped it. The next night, it was angled again, this time toward the large window that looked out over the Blackwood forest. I chuckled, blaming the old building's vibrations. A week later, it wasn't just the spear. A row of arrowheads, once fanned out in a neat semicircle, were now all aligned, their sharp flint tips pointing directly at that same window. Forest. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This was no longer a coincidence. I started taking pictures at the beginning of my shift, just to prove I wasn't losing my mind. Every morning, the photos confirmed it. The artifacts were moving, slowly, methodically. Everything in that exhibit was reorienting itself to face the woods. The centerpiece of the collection was a ceremonial mask, carved from ancient, dark wood. Its face was gaunt, with hollowed eyes and a mouth stretched in a silent, agonizing howl. The plaque called it a representation of the winter spirit of famine. The local elders rarely spoke of it, but whispers in town called it by another name. A Wendigo mask. I'd always found it unsettling, but now, a primal fear clung to it. The mask, which always faced forward, had started to turn, just a fraction of an inch each night, but its hollow gaze was slowly drifting towards the window, towards the forest. I started spending more time watching the security monitors, my eyes glued to the camera in the Indigenous exhibit. I'd fast forward through hours of footage, seeing nothing. The movements were too slow, too patient for the camera to catch. The unease grew into a quiet dread that gnawed at me through the long, silent hours. The winter winds howled outside, sounding less like wind and more like a mournful cry. I began to feel watched. The feeling was strongest near the big window, as if something was standing just beyond the tree line, staring back at me. One night, the first heavy blizzard of the season hit. The world outside the museum walls vanished into a swirling vortex of white. I was sealed in. That night, the feeling of being watched was unbearable. Around 2 a.m., a loud crack echoed from the exhibit hall. My heart leaped into my throat. Grabbing my heavy-duty flashlight, I crept out of the security office. The air in the hallway was unnaturally cold, my breath pluming in front of me. As I rounded the corner to the exhibit, I saw it. The glass case holding the mask was shattered. Shards glittered on the floor like jagged ice. The mask was gone. Panic seized me. He spun around, my flashlight beam cutting wildly through the darkness. Where could it go? My radio was useless in the storm. I was completely alone. My light finally fell on the large window overlooking the forest, and there, pressed against the inside of the frosty pane, was a handprint. But it wasn't human. It was too long. The fingers impossibly thin, tipped with what looked like blackened claws. The print was already starting to fade as the glass frosted over again. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. A low scratching sound started at the far end of the hall. Scrape. Scrape. Drag. It was the sound of something heavy being pulled across the floor. Something with sharp edges. I pointed my light down the corridor. At the very edge of the beam, I saw the tip of the hunting spear, scraping along the polished wood. It was moving on its own, sliding away from me, leading the way towards the museum's back exit, the door that led directly to the snow-choked forest. All the artifacts were on the move now. The arrowheads skittered across the floor like insects. The ceremonial rattles shook with a dry, deathly hiss. They were all heading for the back door, a slow, macabre procession drawn by an unseen force. And at the head of this parade, hovering impossibly in the air, was the Wendigo mask. Its hollow eyes seemed to burn with a faint, cold light, and the silent scream on its carved lips felt deafening in the silence. It turned, just for a second, and its empty gaze locked onto me. I felt a hunger in that look, an ancient, bottomless starvation that chilled me to my very soul. I didn't think. Just ran. I sprinted in the opposite direction, toward the main entrance. The scraping and hissing grew louder behind me, faster. I fumbled with the heavy brass handles of the front doors, my fingers numb with cold and fear. The storm was a wall of white, but it was better than what was behind me. I burst out into the blizzard, the wind tearing at me, the snow blinding me. I didn't look back. I just ran, plunging into the storm, not knowing where I was going, only knowing I had to get away from the museum. I stumbled through the snow for what felt like hours, guided only by instinct. By some miracle, I found the main road and a passing snowplow picked me up just before dawn. I told the police a crazy story about a break-in, about a thief who was freakishly strong and stole a bunch of artifacts. They didn't believe me, but they couldn't explain the shattered case or the missing items. I quit my job that day. I packed a bag and drove until the snow turned to rain and the pine trees turned to palms. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I think about that museum. I think about those artifacts, marching out into the forest, called home by whatever was waiting for them in the trees. And I think about that mask, with its hollow eyes and its silent, hungry scream. I didn't see what it was leading them to, and I don't ever want to. Some things aren't meant to be exhibited. Some things are meant to be left alone, buried deep in the winter woods, and forgotten. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to follow for more Tales from the Shadows. My first season on Search and Rescue was mostly uneventful. A few lost hikers, a couple of kids who wandered too far from their campsite standard stuff. But the call we got in late October, just as the leaves were turning to fire and the air grew a sharp, biting edge, changed everything. A young man named Ethan had gone missing near the old Blackstone River. He'd been kayaking, and his overturned vessel was found snagged on a fallen log. But Ethan was nowhere to be seen. We set up a command post near the riverbank as dusk began to bleed into the sky. The team was experienced, a mix of seasoned veterans and eager rookies like myself. The plan was simple. Sweep the riverbanks downstream, calling out his name. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the forest plunged into a deep, inky blackness that our headlamps could only partially pierce. The air grew cold, carrying the damp, earthy smell of the river and something else, something ancient and unsettling. That's when we heard it for the first time. A faint cry, carried on the wind. Over! Ere! The voice was strained, weak, but unmistakably human. It came from downstream, deeper into the tangled woods that hugged the river. A jolt of adrenaline shot through me. Did you hear that? I asked my partner, a grizzled veteran named Dave. He nodded, his face green. Sounds like our guy. let's move. We radioed it in, and the whole team started pushing through the dense underbrush. Toward the sound, the terrain was brutal. Thorny bushes tore at our clothes, and unseen roots seemed to grab at our ankles. We kept calling out, "Ethan, keep yelling, we're coming." And he did. "Over here. Hurry." His voice seemed to get stronger, closer. We were maybe 100 yards from the river, fighting our way through a thicket of older trees, when another call echoed through the night, this time from a completely different direction. "Over." Other. It was the same voice. The same desperate plea. But this one came from our left, back towards the river we had just left. I froze, my blood running cold. Dave stopped beside me, his headlamp beam cutting a frantic path through the darkness. "What was that?" I whispered, my heart pounding against my ribs. He didn't answer. He just held up a hand, listening. Then it happened again. "Hurry! I'm over here." From the woods in front of us, almost immediately followed by, "Over here, help me." From the riverbank behind us. They were identical. The same pitch, the same desperation. It was like an echo, but it wasn't an echo. It was two distinct points of origin. My mind struggled to make sense of it. How could one person be in two places at once? Dave's voice was low and steady when he finally spoke into his radio. "Command, this is SAR. 2. We have a confusing situation. We're hearing the subject's voice from two separate locations simultaneously. Repeat, 2 locations." The radio crackled back, the dispatcher's voice laced with confusion. They advised us to proceed with caution and try to pinpoint one source. We chose the one deeper in the woods, the one we'd been heading for initially. It seemed more consistent. As we pushed forward, the two voices continued their haunting duet, one luring us deeper into the forest, the other trying to pull us back to the water. The woods grew unnaturally quiet between the calls. No crickets, no rustling of small animals, just the sound of our own ragged breathing and the chilling, impossible cries for help. An older member of the team, a local guy named Ben, whose family had lived in these parts for generations, looked visibly shaken. I saw him touch a small pouch tied to his belt. "This is wrong," he muttered. "Just loud enough for me to hear. This place, it plays tricks." We were getting closer to the first voice. It sounded like it was just beyond a small ridge ahead. "Almost there. Please, hurry. Scream it." The desperation in the voice was palpable. "Ittore." Adju made you want to run headlong into the darkness to help. But as we crested the ridge, our headlamps illuminated a small, empty clearing. There was nothing there, just mud, leaves, and the gnarled trunks of ancient trees. The voice, which had sounded so close moments before, now screamed from right behind us. We all spun around, our beams of light crisscrossing in a panic. The second voice, the one from the river, was now deafeningly loud. "Over here!" it bellowed, a raw, guttural sound that was no longer just a cry for help. It was a command, it was a lure, and it was coming from a spot on the riverbank we had passed not 10 minutes ago. Dave made the call. "All teams, fall back to the command post. Now, we're pulling out." There was no argument. The forest felt like it was closing in, the very air thick with malice. As we retreated, the two voices seemed to merge, twisting into a cacophony of pleas and taunts that followed us all the way back. They swirled around us, sometimes sounding like Ethan, sometimes like a perfect imitation of our own team members calling out to each other. It was a disorienting, terrifying symphony of mimicry. Back at the command post, the mood was somber. The search was called off for the night. Ben, the old-timer, pulled me aside. His eyes were wide with a fear I'd never seen in a grown man. "You don't go back in there," he said, his voice a strained whisper. "Not at night. There are things in those woods, things that imitate. They learn your voice, learn the voices of those you're looking for. They lure you, separate you, and you're never seen again." "What you heard tonight? It wasn't Ethan. We never found Ethan." The official report listed him as a drowning victim. his body likely swept away by the river's current. But I know what I heard. I know the chilling, perfect mimicry of a human voice, calling from two places at once. Sometimes, late at night, I can still hear it in my head, that desperate cry of "over here," and I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if we had reached the clearing just a few seconds earlier, or if one of us had been foolish enough to follow the second voice back to the river. I left search and rescue at the end of that season. I couldn't shake the feeling that when you're searching for the lost in those woods, something else is searching for you, too. Thanks for tuning in to our story tonight. If you felt that chill run down your spine, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and never, ever follow a voice in the dark.
The old Argyle station wasn't much more than a wooden shack and a wind-whipped platform, a lonely stop in the vast snowy wilderness. It was my job to monitor its security feed from a cozy office 50 miles away. Mostly, I watched snow pile up and hoped the cameras wouldn't freeze over. But on the third night of the worst blizzard in a decade, something else appeared. The storm had shut everything down. No trains had run for days. The roads were impassable. Yet on the grainy black and white feed, a figure materialized on the platform. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs long and spidery like bent branches. It just appeared as if the swirling snow itself had woven it into existence. My first thought was a stranded traveler, a terrible thought given the minus 30-degree temperature. I tried the station's PA system, my voice crackling through the speakers out there in the gale. "Hello, this is dispatch. The station is closed. No trains are running. Are you all right?" There was no response. The figure didn't even flinch. It just began to pace. Back and forth, from one end of the short platform to the other. Its movements were jerky, unnatural. It was barefoot in the deep snow, wearing what looked like tattered rags that whipped around its skeletal frame. But it didn't seem to feel the cold. I zoomed in as close as the old camera would allow. The face was a blur of shadows, but I could make out a long, gaunt head. There was something disturbing about its posture, hunched and predatory. Hours crawled by. The storm raged, and the figure paced. It never stopped, never slowed. Its relentless, rhythmic movement was hypnotic, a pendulum counting down to something awful. I started feeling a deep, gnawing unease, a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. It was a primal fear, the kind you feel when you know you're being watched by something that isn't human. I called my supervisor, my voice trembling. "Sir, you need to see this. There's someone at Argyle." He logged in from his home, his voice tired over the phone. "Probably just a glitch, son. Snow's playing tricks on the sensor." Then he went quiet. I heard a sharp intake of breath. What in God's name is that? We watched together, two men miles apart, united by a silent, growing dread. We checked every log, every system. No one had entered the station. No tracks led to it through the pristine, deep snow, except for the ones the creature was now making on the platform. The wind howled through my phone speaker, a ghostly symphony to the thing's dreadful ballet. Then it stopped. Right in the middle of the platform, directly facing the camera, it slowly lifted its head. The camera quality was poor, but I didn't need high definition to see the 2 points of faint dark emptiness where eyes should have been. It felt like it was looking right through the lens, right through the 50 miles of frozen forests, right into my soul. A hollow, cavernous hunger seemed to radiate from the screen, a chilling emptiness that promised nothing but an endless winter. "Is it looking at us?" My supervisor whispered, his voice barely audible. I couldn't answer. My throat was tight with fear. The figure raised one long, twig-like arm and pointed. Not at the camera, but up towards the sky. We both stared, utterly mystified. Then it began to change. Its form seemed to shimmer and stretch, its limbs elongating even further, the rags around it dissolving into the swirling snow. It grew taller, its head nearly scraping the station's overhang, its body becoming less solid, more like a column of wind and shadow and malice. The PA speaker at the station crackled to life on its own. It wasn't my voice this time. It was a sound that will haunt me until the day I die. It was a low, scraping whisper, like dry leaves skittering across ice, but it formed a word, a name, my name. The sound was layered, ancient, filled with the echoes of 1,000 lonely winters and insatiable, desperate hunger. My blood ran cold. My supervisor screamed over the phone, shut it down, kill the feed. My hands shook as I fumbled with the mouse. The figure on the screen began to contort, its shape twisting impossibly. It was no longer pacing. It was writhing, a silhouette of pure agony and rage against the white canvas of the storm. Just before I clicked the button to shut down the remote server, it lunged towards the camera. For a split second, its face filled the screen. It wasn't a face at all. It was a hollowed-out mask of bone and shadow, a gaping maw that seemed to stretch into an abyss, a scream frozen in time. The last thing I saw was that bottomless mouth, rushing forward to swallow the world. The feed went black. The line with my supervisor was dead. I sat there in the humming silence of my office, the only light coming from my blank monitor. The storm outside my own window suddenly seemed much more menacing. I couldn't shake the feeling that the thing from the station wasn't gone. It had seen me. It had spoken my name. I felt a profound, unshakable cold settle deep inside my bones, a cold that no fire could ever warm. The next day, a rescue team finally made it to Argyle Station. They found nothing. No footprints in the snow except for a single deep set of tracks that started in the middle of the platform and ended abruptly at the edge. The camera it had lunged at was shattered, the lens frosted over with a strange, web-like pattern of ice, even though the other cameras were fine. I quit my job the following week. I moved as far south as I could, away from the snow and the pines and the crushing silence of the North Woods. But sometimes, on cold nights, when the wind whistles just right, I hear it, that dry, scraping whisper. And I know, deep in my soul, that the thing from the Snowbound station is still out there, pacing and waiting. And it remembers my name. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next descent into the shadows.